try fighting uphill with me, but the dangers of conformity. A lot of us with no action destroy this corporate thing. A lot of us with no action destroy this corporate thing. Brave your ancestors for the power you need. We're not gonna give them. I'm not wearing a mask. We're not scared around
evening, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with you once again. Andy is saying that it's Dot's birthday today. First of all, it is not Dot's birthday today. That was December 4th. He says she's 0.6 this week, which I don't know what that means, but we're going to roll with it. He says that everyone should retweet me. Apparently, he's tweeting as me because he has co-opted my identity because that's what good spouses do. Shortly before the show today, he told me to do a sound check, and I'm very glad he did because I did not have a microphone plugged in. So I was able to do that and get actually ready to go before the show because I know you guys know I've started shows before with no audio, and it's always very fascinating. Now, I want to highlight this for you guys. This amazing flower fell off a tree in Florida, and I was just like, my mind was blown because people in Colorado, all the other places I've lived, would have lost their minds over this flower and paid top dollar to get a plant that grows this kind of flower. So if you guys know what kind of flower this is, let me know. It's amazing. It reminds me of a cross between an orchid and an iris, which are two amazing flowers on their own in my book. I'm going to do more research, but I wanted to throw it out there, see what you guys think because I've never seen anything like it. It is beautiful. And there's Dot in the background being adorable. She was really being a pain in the neck. She was barking at an ibis that was walking by. I was really curious if he would fly away, but he did not. He chose to continue walking, albeit in a somewhat scandalized fashion. So we were enjoying our Florida adventures as we always do. She does love to bark at birds by the lake. That is one of her favorite pastimes. And honestly, I can't say I blame her because it seems like fun to bark at all these different shapes and sizes. So today, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to go for because I don't have a lot of energy. I was commenting in the chat that I feel like I need more coffee tonight. Unfortunately, I am limited to only 200 milligrams of caffeine a day, which didn't seem like an issue when I first took up the mantle of being a pregnant mother, but now seems like I'm really missing out because I can only have 200 milligrams because it turns out as you keep your caffeine supply steady, if your tiredness increases exponentially, you're really going to feel it, and there's nothing you can do about it. So we're going to go with it and see what we come up with. Thank you all for joining me tonight, as always. Let's talk again, just like yesterday, we were talking about the minority parents standing up to this woke mind virus. This is from today. This is Bethany Mandel. She's a friend of the show. We've had her on as a guest. She's fantastic. Live photos from the rally in Montgomery County, Maryland, demanding an opt-out on LGBT curriculum. The MCPS Board of Education refused to allow them in the building, saying there were safety concerns. So you want to talk about bigoted and xenophobic? Keep minority parents out of the building because there are safety concerns with their opinions. So let's see who some of these parents are. Oh, look at this. I see a lot of brown faces. I see a lot of representation here. I see a lot of the diversity they're always looking for, but they don't even want those people in the building. Crazy. We will not be silent. We demand #opt-out. These people are so good at making signs. It's nonsense. Democrat Councilwoman Kristen Mink said this issue has put some Muslim families on the same side of an issue as white supremacists and outright bigots. Who are the bigots here? Great question, Bethany. I met Natalie F. Gonzalez over the weekend. Very nice, like her a lot. And I told her the last county council knew me well because of the masks and vaccine mandates. She asked me what issues animate me now, given that COVID is over. What I should have answered was that COVID exposed that our county leadership do not understand the word no. They don't respect residents' requests to simply be left alone. They didn't with COVID, and they aren't here with kids and this curriculum. Parents just want an opt-out. Absolutely. And what somebody was commenting down here, an opt-out is not enough. It should be opt-in to teach any of this stuff. This is absolute craziness. And kids shouldn't be learning this stuff at least until they're in college, if at all. This is not really something I think that kids should be learning in school. MCPS is Montgomery County something. Montgomery County Public Schools. Yeah, Board of Education. Yep. So Montgomery County something. And here we have a Washington Post article about this. Hundreds of Maryland parents protest lessons they say offend their faith. Now, Given that they didn't want to give any kind of exemptions, religious exemptions for religion during COVID, I really have to wonder if this is going to continue as Muslim and Hindu parents step up and say, this is not okay. We're not cool with this. I do know that a lot of Ethiopian immigrants are also heavily Christian, like actually, truly, strongly Christian, and they are standing for the same principles that they have believed all along. A crowd of mostly Muslim and Ethiopian Orthodox parents want the state's largest school system to exempt their kids from LGBTQ content. Hundreds of parents demonstrated outside the Montgomery County Board of Education meeting Tuesday, demanding that Maryland's largest school district allow them to shield their children from books and lessons that contain LGBTQ characters. The crowd was filled largely with Muslim and Ethiopian Orthodox parents who say the school system is violating their religious rights protected under the First Amendment by not providing an opt-out. 3 families have filed a lawsuit against the school system. Good, perfect, exactly as it should be. The books that feature the characters are part of a supplemental curriculum the school system launched this academy year. It adds titles from every grade level, including kindergarten to 5th grade, where the curriculum has been most controversial. A few months ago, a handful of parents had spoken up at board meetings about the issue, but the demonstrations have expanded to hundreds. Many of them declined to speak with any media Tuesday. Good. After organizers sent out a message instructing attendees to direct the press to speak only to a select few. Very, 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 very smart. Very smart. Do not speak to the press pretty much ever. This is one of the things that Trump was continually finding out, was that every time he would speak with them, he would get cut and clipped and retweeted out of context, and it allowed them to twist his message in ways that he never expected and did not plan for. So, good on them for having that strategy in place already. I'm really happy to see that. Now, are they actually going, so here's my question. Are they going to respect the requests of these parents because they are higher on the victimhood hierarchy, according to the left, not according to these parents, but they are higher on the left's victimhood hierarchy than white Christian parents or families? So, what's the left to do with this? That's the question, right? Are they going to say, you know what, we're not going to force you to do anything you don't want to do based on your religion because that's the correct thing to do based on your First Amendment rights? Really optimistic with this case that the parents are pushing forward and optimistic that they win there too. I will definitely be keeping an eye on that particular case going forward. In fact, I will look up the name of that case in just a second. But I wanted to talk further about COVID because you guys know Anthony Fauci has been failing forward, which is always very exciting to watch as we watch the people we dislike the most, who do the most damage to our country, continually succeed and come out on top. It's not how it's supposed to be, but it is exactly what happens. I've been talking with Andy a lot about what we're going to teach our kids about stuff like life not being fair. And I personally have kind of a hard time with just telling kids, well, life ain't fair, you better just deal with it. Because there is a very real, very visceral, very human element to feeling that something's not fair. And I think probably the best thing to teach kids is that if you see something that's not fair, you should make it your goal in life. Take that responsibility upon yourself to try and make sure that life is more fair going forward. And I don't mean fair in the leftist manner. I mean actually fair. I mean, for example, if someone like Anthony Fauci is in a position where he puts tons of people's lives at risk and basically ruins their livelihood and their education and their mental health, he should not be able to fail forward like this. Anthony Fauci fails forward, lands cushy job at Georgetown after disastrous run as government leader. It's good to be Anthony Fauci. Starting in 2020, Dr. Fauci quickly became one of America's most divisive figures. His initial flip-flop on mask recommendations undoubtedly helped change global COVID policy. His promotion of school closures and lockdowns harmed millions of children while accomplishing nothing of value. He criticized politicians who didn't listen to his demands and promoted failed ideologues like Andrew Cuomo, currently endorsed by Trump. Trump comes up in a second. Importantly, he also helped organize a group of experts into lying about the origins of the pandemic. In conjunction with former NIH head Francis Collins, Fauci helped ensure that the infamous Proximal Origins paper was released in February 2020. That paper inaccurately claimed to debunk the lab leak hypothesis despite the lack of evidence ruling it out. Later, evidence emerged Fauci's organization had helped fund a shady corporation involved in gain-of-function research in Wuhan. But all of these mistakes paled in comparison to his disinformation and division after the COVID vaccines were released. Based on virtually nothing, he claimed that the vaccines were essentially 100% effective against severe COVID outcomes. Here is the Independent tweet from 2021. All 3 vaccines are 100% effective against death and hospitalization, Fauci says. Make a note of that date, February 2021, because on January 19th, 2021, President Trump awarded presidential commendations to Operation Warp Speed team, including, drumroll please, Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Deborah Birx. But I digress. His unjustifiable comments were responsible for creating inexcusable discriminatory vaccine mandates and passports. Left-wing politicians sharing common ideology with Fauci rushed to implement policy based on his inaccurate assertions. And for all these failures, Fauci's now being rewarded with a cushy new gig. Well, what can he say? He got a medal right as Trump was leaving office anyway. He had the full encouragement of Trump to basically become king of the country for the entire pandemic. And this is what he came up with, and he got a medal on the way out. So good for him. Just more of the same. Dr. Fauci rewarded for endless incompetence. There's debate to be had over whether some of Fauci's actions could be ascribed to incompetence or willful disregard for the truth, but there is no debate over the result of his endless list of mistakes and misdirections. News broke Monday that as a reward for his accomplishments, Fauci would be made Distinguished University Professor in the Georgetown School of Medicine Department of Infectious Disease. Not only that, but he would be given an additional appointment in the university's McCourt School of Public Policy. After years of claiming that scientists only advise while politicians set public policy, it appears Fauci is yet again following his true ambition of telling others what to do. Why wouldn't he when he was basically given a blank check in 2020? At this point, it is not surprising that Fauci is moving on from being the highest paid government employee to a cushy university job. If there's anything we've learned from how the elite class behaved during COVID, it's that they will always protect and reward themselves no matter how poorly they perform, like, for example, a presidential commendation in January of 2021. So, this doesn't surprise anyone. It is really frustrating. I want to ask you guys in the chat what your least favorite thing that Anthony Fauci did was, and what you think could have been done better when he was in control of the country, and how he could have been better reined in. What should have been done to really keep him in check, because he really was functionally given a blank check, given the keys to the kingdom, and basically just said, do whatever you want with the country, lock everything down, keep kids out of school, make sure that they have no option to learn or succeed, interrupt their routines. I don't like public school. I don't like the system at all, but kids had routines that they were in. Sure, they weren't thriving. They weren't doing all that well. Being removed from that environment at the drop of a hat certainly did not do them any favors. Really, really disgusting. Really frustrating, really hard to watch. You can ask Bethany Mandel, who was fighting against this whole thing from the beginning. But, yeah, you guys let me know what you think. Also, question, did you guys know that President Trump had given Anthony Fauci a Medal of Commendation in 2021 after he was leaving office? This was after January 6th, right as he was on his way out, January 19th, 2021. He gave Fauci an honorary award for being such a wonderful person during COVID. Yeah, so really no respect there. No love lost at all on my part. But in other news, with government interference, the DHS outsourced censorship to third parties and tried to cover it up, according to the House Judiciary GOP report. This is fascinating, and I guarantee you no one's going to talk about this. This is pretty big news. This is definitely something that we should all be aware of. Federal government's moves show it implicitly admitting that its censorship activities are unconstitutional, according to the interim staff report. The Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency outsourced its censorship operation to a nonprofit it funded, following a First Amendment lawsuit by Louisiana and Missouri attorneys general, implicitly admitting that its censorship activities are unconstitutional, according to an interim staff report by House Judiciary Committee Republicans shared with Just News. So, here's what happened. The DHS's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, that's a mouthful, they were coming under fire with a First Amendment lawsuit from Louisiana and Missouri, whom I gave a shout out to yesterday as being a source of wonderful conservative policy. So, instead of actually taking ownership for what they had done and fessing up to having done something that violated the First Amendment rights of many, many Americans, the Department of Homeland Security instead outsourced this to a nonprofit that it funded. So they funded their own nonprofit organization to which they could outsource this work. CISA also wanted to use the Center for Internet Security, which operates the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center and Elections Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center, as its mouthpiece to obfuscate its own role in censorship, the report says. It cites spring 2022 meeting notes from the Subcommittee on Protecting Critical Infrastructure from Misinformation and Disinformation, which was established by CISA's Cybersecurity Advisory Committee. The notes show the so-called MDM subcommittee was fully aware of the contemporaneous severe public outcry about their Disinformation Governance Board, which was disbanded after just a few months. I believe that is the organization that, what was her name? That crazy lady who was super into musical theater and also was going to be a czar of disinformation. I think her name was Nina. I can't remember her last name. But you guys know who I'm talking about. That was disbanded for a reason. People were super upset about it. That's what this was linked to, right? The AG's lawsuit against the Biden administration and CISA for pressuring social media to censor disfavored narratives, according to the report. So this also ties into the Twitter files. Good to know. The subcommittee discussed circumventing the First Amendment by outsourcing those activities to third parties, which would also, quote, avoid the appearance of government propaganda, according to meeting notes gained by House Judiciary Republicans. Suzanne Spalding, a former CIA advisor who's currently at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and Jeff Hale, who leads CISA's Election Security Initiative, suggested designating the ISACs as a clearinghouse for information to avoid the appearance of government propaganda. So they knew what this would look like. They knew what it was. They didn't want it to look like government propaganda. So this is what they did instead. The report characterized this as laundering the government's message through EIISAC. And just to refer you back, that is the Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Goodness gracious. I hate all these acronyms. Spalding emailed Kate Starbird, co-founder of the University of Washington Center for an Informed Public and MDM subcommittee chair, worrying that it was, quote, only a matter of time before their work was publicly exposed and suggesting they be proactive in telling our story. Starbird agreed, saying they had a couple of pretty obvious vulnerabilities. Yes, vulnerabilities, because you know exactly what the heck you're doing. You know exactly what this looks like. You yourselves were concerned that this would look like government propaganda, government meddling in the common conversation between citizens about things that they have every right to discuss. And the reason you're laundering this through one of your nonprofits is because you had already faced a First Amendment lawsuit from two separate attorneys general, Louisiana and Missouri. House Judiciary Republicans said CISA still has not adequately complied with subpoena for relevant documents and much more fact-finding is necessary. We'll be looking forward to hearing more about that, although not holding our breaths. To continue this kind of saga, along this vein, Homeland Security expanded its authority to wage, quote, domestic surveillance and censorship, according to the House report. No cyber component needed for proposed rapid response team to parachute into local jurisdictions to help election officials with informational threats, the agency's subcommittee threat. So let's unpack this here. Secret documents obtained by the House Judiciary Committee show that the Department of Homeland Security agency expanded its mission to surveil American speech on social media, colluded with big tech and government-funded third parties to censor by proxy, and tried to hide its plainly unconstitutional activities from the public, according to an interim staff report released Monday night. The findings add detail to reporting by Just the News about the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and its work with private entities to remove, throttle, and label purported misinformation in elections, Hunter Biden, and COVID-19 efforts that might even constitute election meddling and sometimes target true content. Definitely so. The severe public outcry in spring 2022 against DHS's Disinformation Governance Board, shuttered a few months later, so alarmed CISA that its advisors and its advisors that they tried to cover their tracks on censorship and surveillance, which included scrubbing CISA's website of reference to domestic misinformation and disinformation. Wow, they must have been scared to remove it from their own site. Holy cow, I need to follow the Weaponization Committee. I thought I did. Let's make sure I do. Yes, I want to follow them. Okay. Yeah, so the Weaponization Committee is pointing out that arguably the worst part of CISA's censorship efforts, the cover-up. CISA has attempted to conceal, where did it go? Its unconstitutional activities from the American public and remove evidence of wrongdoing. That's not surprising at all. CISA's MDM advisors fretted that it was only a matter of time before someone realizes we exist and starts asking about our work. Oh no, that's terrible. You may have already discussed this with Jen, but I'm wondering if we should try to find time to talk with CISA's comms and legislative folks about how we socialize what we're doing. So how do we introduce the idea that what we're doing is positive? They were not being proactive enough about their message. They were not on point enough to head this off of the pass. They were coming up on this behind the fact, and this is really, really telling. So this is just a crappy attempt to make it hidden. CISA purged its website of references to domestic MDM and its First Amendment violations in response to public pressure. I'm not sure what MDM is referring to here. Let's see if we can find that. Find MDM, public policy. Mobile device management. I don't think that's it. MDM solution allows IT administrators. Okay, something to do with tech. We can gather from this somewhat confusing definition, but better than nothing, I suppose. The majority of the committee and its weaponization of the federal government subcommittee said they are still investigating the extent of the public-private efforts that developed out of the 5-year-old agency. Outside groups are also seeking answers with varying success. The Fed's Nina Jankowicz, I just remembered her name. Oh my gosh, my brain was on 2 different tracks there. That was her name. That was a lady who loved musical theater, and censoring people. She was the one who was related to the Disinformation Governance Board and part of the reason that it got ousted. Anyway, the Fed's heavily redacted communications between Disinformation Governance Board staff and its leader, Nina Jankowicz. Oh my gosh, it was right there. It was right there. If I just continued reading, we would have seen it. Oh my gosh. I'm killing it tonight. Hiding most of the legal justifications and talking points it created to defend the unit from, quote, blowback. CISA is now a domestic intelligence and speech police agency, far exceeding its statutory authority and having metastasized, into the nerve center of the federal government's domestic surveillance and censorship operations on social media. The House Judiciary GOP report says, I personally deeply appreciate that language. They are treating it like a cancer, which is exactly what it is. This evolution was not universally popular across the government, according to a May 2021 email from former DHS official Brian D. Valance to Jen Easterly, the incoming CISA director. Off the record, some at the Office of Director of National Intelligence are not big fan of CISA and would not like it to have proposed Social Media Data and Threat Analysis Center, he said. The report plots out the major players and their relationships with CISA, including the nonprofit Center for Internet Security, which received $27 million in fiscal year 2024 to operate the multi-state Information Sharing and Analysis Center and Elections Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center. This is a quote from Mike Benz. Mike is, let's see what we can see. No, we'll have to go to Twitter. After 15 months of pressure on the CISA censorship scandal, it's cracking wide open. CISA, only a matter of time before someone realizes we exist, right? This we know. They weren't ready for FFO freedom, M. Taibbi, Schellenberger, American First Legal, L.H. Fong, and more. That's right. They were not. So those were the Twitter files. Those are the peeps who dropped those files, and they're correct. He is correct, rather. They did not expect that at all, and it really caught them blindsided, which is great. They deserve to be caught out and called out. DHS's 2-year-old Cybersecurity Advisory Committee established a since-shuttered subcommittee tasked with protecting, quote, critical infrastructure from misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. The latter a category sometimes jeered as true but inconvenient. Yes, accurate. The so-called MDM subcommittee included former CIA legal advisor Suzanne Spalding, then Twitter chief legal officer Vijay Gadde, and Kate Starbird, co-founder of the University of Washington Center for an Informed Public, a leader in the election integrity partnership that CISA helped stand up. Okay, so all horrible, horrible, horrible people affiliated with horrible, awful organizations. Government participants included CISA's election security staff, including Jeff Hale and former Washington Secretary of State Kim Wyman. Through rapid mission creep, CISA expanded beyond cybersecurity to countering foreign malign influence operations and then domestic disinformation, even correcting the assumption of another disinformation cop the day after the 2020 election that disinformation on mail-in ballot fraud was outside your purview. It had 15 dedicated and part and full-time MDM staff at its peak, and the MDM subcommittee even suggested this was just the beginning of a whole-of-government approach that could, for example, perform narrative or content-based analysis for the FBI. Guys, this is terrifying. What they had in mind may be on hold for now, but this is always a threat. Always a threat. And I truly do appreciate organizations like America First Legal, Matt Taibbi, Lee Fong, Michael Schellenberger, and those people to hold them accountable. They are some of the last true journalists we have, and I deeply appreciate them. They need to be protected at all costs. Lee Fong works for The Intercept, if you don't know him. He does great work over there. Subcommittee members pushed aside legitimate criticism and urged CISA to continue on its unconditional trajectory. The report says, citing notes from its August 30th meeting, Spalding encouraged Starbird not to focus too heavily on the distinctions between domestic and foreign threats. Wow. While Hale, whom the House Judiciary GOP emphasized was a federal government employee, said CISA should be, quote, actor agnostic. So they shouldn't care where the threat was coming from. They shouldn't care. They shouldn't even really bother knowing. So never mind if it's American citizens whose First Amendment free speech rights you're violating. Doesn't matter. You need to shut them down. Top priority. When state and local election administration officials asked CISA to stay out of their work, except where foreign adversaries are at play, according to an August 8th meeting notes, Gadde claimed that it would be difficult to confirm, and Starbird emphasized MDM was, quote, universal, not observing jurisdictional boundaries. So, we're here, we're everywhere, got used to it. Subcommittee members even discussed parachuting into local jurisdictions as a rapid response team to help election officials struggling with specific informational threats, an idea Hale called, quote, fascinating, according to the June 14th, 2022 meeting notes. Again, Hale was a federal government employee saying these things. The report reserves particular opprobrium, which is a great word, by the way, we'll look that up here in a second, for CISA's focus on malinformation, which by definition is factual information without adequate context, as determined by government actors whose evaluations of truth and falsity are not necessarily subjective. Not necessarily subjective, huh? Interesting. Necessarily subjective. I would say not necessarily objective. Definitely. Let's look up opprobrium. Define opprobrium. There we go. Harsh criticism or censure, the public disgrace arising from someone's shameful conduct. Good. Good. I want all of these organizations subject to the most stringent possible opprobrium. Good for them. It cites Starbird's comments to Gadde on why she decided against citing research on MDM's threat to democratic societies in a subcommittee report. Disinformation is, quote, inherently political, so, quote, every example is bait. Spalding proposed a compromise in which CISA would recognize malinformation within its current scope, but focus on false information at this stage. Starbird responded that unfortunately current public discourse regards malinformation as within democratic norms, and CISA could face bad faith criticism for recommending its censorship. Wow. Okay, we're going to end it here. You guys can see how insanely bad this was. This is part of the reason that whole Nina Jankowicz thing only lasted for a few months. It's insanely bad. It's worse, I think, than even most of us were thinking. What we were able to see with Nina Jankowicz was just the tip of the iceberg. And know this is the case with every single one of these stories. Every one of them. Where you can see something big and bold and glaring, you need to know there are things 50 times worse just 2 inches down. Trust me. Trust me. This is always the case. All right, you guys. We're going to switch gears here. I think we're just going to talk about a couple more things here because I have little to no energy remaining, but I want to touch on, let's see if we can cover 3 more things. I want to talk about Ford's campaign because I know you guys remember it. Ford's redefining tough Rainbow Raptor commercial goes viral, sparking online backlash. Here it is, hashtag very gay raptor. It's rainbow. Look at that. Look how tough it is. Automobile manufacturer Ford has become the latest target for conservatives after an old ad featuring a rainbow-colored raptor resurfaced on the internet. On May 17th, Twitter user Philip Oliver Hulse, a self-proclaimed alpha male, shared a video clip of the ad, which was released last year in Pride Month, June. Philip reposted the video originally uploaded on TikTok by user Brian Michael on May 16th. Brian wrote in the text overlay of the video that the company destroyed 120 years of American history in 1 minute. He also added the now popular phrase, "Go woke, go broke," which is frequently used by conservatives. How dare they? Ford's very gay Raptor adopted a glittery gold body adorned with a wave of rainbow running from the front side of the car to the back. The Pride-themed Raptor was a response to a homophobic comment about a Ranger Raptor video that was shared in 2021. This next-gen rainbow Ford Raptor was brought to the scene to redefine the meaning of tough, and in an attempt to proudly announce their advocacy for the LGBTQ+ community. In the wake of the recent online backlash several companies have been receiving for showing their support for the community, right-wingers keep digging into past commercials or promotions by companies that have advocated for the community. The recent attack on Ford is a part of the string of criticism and queer-phobic, social media movement carried out by the conservatives of America. Similar to what they did with Bud Light, they're now calling to boycott the American automobile company that has been in business since 1903. Well, that's a really interesting foreshadowing at what I'm about to show you next. Ford to lay off 1,000 white-collar workers after losing big money on electric vehicles in 2022. I know we keep saying it, but go woke, go broke. Ford lost $34,000 on every electric vehicle sold in 2022. Now the losses are resulting in mass layoffs. Electric vehicles and the taxpayer-subsidized industrial police policy that mandates them is an unmitigated disaster. So this, to me, doesn't sound like a case of go woke, go broke. I just thought it was super ironic that we have this sassy little article talking about how conservatives are dumb because Ford's been around for forever, since 1903, so obviously nothing bad's going to happen. And then this happens based on the poor policy decisions they're making. So it sounds like here, I think, is probably a better way of looking at it. It's not necessarily go woke, go broke, but it's a sign. If your company's going woke, they're also making other bad policy decisions. And that's kind of what this looks like here. It fired around 3,000 workers in America last year, followed by 3,800 workers in Europe as well. This latest reduction in Ford's white-collar workforce includes employees in its electric vehicle and software side of the business, the company's spokesman confirmed. Ichthus says 1,000 plus 1,000 ESG points, though. Yeah, for sure. Ford expects to lose $3 billion in operating profits on its EVs this year alone. It's also lost billions from an investment in EV company Rivian. Oh, I keep seeing Rivians on the road. I had no idea what they were. Apparently, they're an electric vehicle. I just learned that just now. The miracle of the Green Revolution, make money disappear faster than gasoline. Yes, that's exactly what's happening. The automaker is looking at borrowing a ton of cash from the government, but even the woke printing machine can't put out this dumpster fire. Ford predicts profitability on its EV business after 2030. That is, if they are still in business. No wonder Toyota is not taking the same strategy. They don't have Uncle Sam to bail them out. Meanwhile, the company is facing a strike from its union workers, and it's starting negotiations with United Auto Workers. UAW President Sean Fain, who was elected in March, has criticized the federal loan, pointing out Ford is receiving support on top of its already sizable profit. This influx of cash is not necessarily benefiting its workforce. Well, that's a very fair analysis. These companies are extremely profitable and will continue to make money hand over fist while they're selling combustion engines or EVs, but the workers still get a smaller and smaller piece of the pie. Fair enough. Random thought, it sure would be sad if these bloated century-old automakers were to be that are in bed with the feds went out of business so new blood could compete in the auto market. Yeah, and Jordan Peterson adds in, oh look, stupid, premature, ideologically enforced ideas cost money. Woke capitalism is the monstrous bastard child of greed and ideology. So I'm loving how Jordan Peterson is tweeting lately. He's tweeting like these very poetic, almost like haikus that look just like this. Woke capitalism is the monstrous bastard child of greed and ideology. It's so true. So pithy. Fascinating. Well, again, I don't think this is necessarily a case of get woke, go broke. This is just them making poor choices and relying on a very, very woke, left-leaning government. However, I thought it was funny. Very ironic. Ha 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 ha. That was funny, but what I'm about to show you next is not. Now, this is going to show us that something that we all already knew. This is something that most of us have been arguing for a really long time. It's not anything to make anyone happy, but it's something that's finally incontrovertible, and I hope that people will start to pay attention to it. So, this is also from Just the News. Transgender suicide deaths are 3.5 times higher than general population, a landmark study shows. Transgender people in Denmark died by suicide and other causes at a younger age on average than other people. Yes, because it turns out when you are transgender, you have a host of issues. A lot of them are mental issues, and the DSM actually had classified gender confusion as a psychological disturbance until just very recently. In fact, let's look that up. DSM, gender dysphoria classification. Can't spell. I can never spell when I'm looking this stuff up. Yeah, a concept designated in DSM-5 TR as clinically significant distress or impairment related to gender incongruence. When did they change the classification? Where transgender is no longer a diagnosis. Right. Denmark. Interesting. Becomes the first country to declassify as a mental disorder. I'm just learning this just now. I hope you guys are enjoying learning this with me. It's so incredibly rich, deeply compellingly ironic that Denmark is also the country that is also finding that these poor people that it just classified as no longer having any kind of mental disturbances are 3.5 times more likely to commit suicide than other groups. That's sad. Maybe you shouldn't have declassified this as a mental disorder. Just saying, just my 2 cents. I hold no ill will toward the trans people who are struggling with this very, very difficult situation. This is a mental health fight, whether people realize that or not, okay? It is. It's hard. I understand. Not all of them are activists. Some of them just want to live their lives. Some of them want to be happy in the bodies that they're in and can't figure out how to do that, and it makes them very confused and miserable to the point of suicidality. I have a very, very great deal of compassion and empathy for these people. That's a hard place to be. But if your country declassified this as a mental disorder and now they're saying, oh my gosh, look at this, they die by suicide and other causes at a younger age on average than younger people, this is something that you should definitely take into account. Transgender people in Denmark had a 3.5 time higher suicide death rate and 7.7 time higher suicide attempt rate compared to the rest of the population, a study published by the JAMA Network showed. Of the more than 6.6 million Danish-born people, 0.06% identify as transgender, with a median coming out at the age of 22. A median coming out age of 22. The study, which the New York Times reports is the first in the world to look at national suicide data for transgender individuals. Why? Why the hell is this the first study to examine the link between a disturbance of the mind like transgenderism and suicidality? We are hurting people by not paying attention to the link between a serious mental upset like transgenderism, because I don't care if the DSM decides to classify it as a mental upset or not. Ordinary, normal people of good conscience, people of good faith are going to look at it and say, it is not normal, it is not typical, it is unusual, it is strange, it is off kilter to think that you are in the wrong body, the literal physical wrong body. How could you look at that and not think that there might be other mental distress associated with that? Oh my gosh, this blows my mind. This is the most unethical thing I think that we will ever see. And I do include all of the COVID nonsense in this. This is the most unethical thing I think that we will see in our generation. I hope. It's certainly one of the most unethical things that I think we've seen in probably since the Tuskegee experiments, at least. It's infuriating. Denmark has a centralized database of all citizens, allowing researchers to conduct massive studies that can't be done in countries like the US. The study does not focus on the suicide rates of self-identified transgender people or on those before or after transition, but only people who have been identified as transgender through administrative registers. Of the nearly 3,800 transgender people in the study, more than 40% had a psychiatric diagnosis compared to a 7% of the general population. That's right. Very highly associated with psychiatric distress. Duh. Holy cow. The median age at which transgender people in Denmark first attempted suicide was 27, compared to the median age of the general population at 36. Of the transgender individuals who died by suicide, their median age was 45, while it was 52 for the rest of the country. Additionally, the study found that the median age of non-suicide death for transgender people in Denmark was 70, which is 8 years younger than the median age of death in the general population. The results of the study came even as Denmark is considered one of the best countries in the world for LGBT people. I will say I now officially have a bone to pick with the author of this article for not pointing out that Denmark was the first country to declassify transgenderism as a mental disorder. This is blowing my mind, and it's really, really frustrating because I don't hate transgender people. I hate the activists. I hate the ideology, all this stuff that's so dangerous to young people and kids that they're forcing on kids at younger and younger ages. I do not hate transgender people and people who are struggling with this kind of stuff. That has to be a difficult road to travel. It has to be. And you can tell by looking at these suicide rates that there's clearly something difficult going on here that needs to be recognized. And we're just not doing it because that does not go along with the ideology, and that makes me mad. And it should make you mad too. All right, let's talk about some of the censorship that professors are facing in the current workforce in our lovely higher education system. Penn State professor says school forced him to admit being white is a problem. Wow. A former Penn State University professor, Zach DiPiero, is suing the school for discriminating against him on the basis of his white race. Good. Set that precedent. Like that lady at Starbucks, the manager, the coordinator, who sued Starbucks and won almost $26 million because they fired her for the crime of being white after something race-related happened at one of their stores, and they realized they needed to make positive motion in the race war. The lawsuit alleges DiPiero was individually singled out for ridicule and humiliation because of the color of his skin. The Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, FAIR, filed the lawsuit with the following details. When he complained about the continuous stream of racial insults directed at white faculty in the writing department, the director of the Affirmative Action Office told him that there is a problem with the white race. There is a problem with the white race. That he should attend anti-racist workshops until you get it, and that he might have mental health issues. Oh my gosh, I would be out for blood. I am so glad he's suing, and I hope he wins bigly. Specifically, one workshop included a presentation captioned, "White teachers are a problem." DiPiero adds the university forced him to teach students that the English language is racist and the embodiment of, quote, white supremacy. The former professor spoke to Fox News Digital Tuesday to say that he was expected by the university to submit to anti-racist brainwashing and doctrine, particularly that he as a white person was inherently flawed on the basis of history. He continued, "I think there's almost a religious cult-like environment where you had this original sin." That's right. That's what I've been saying. Being white is the original sin. Being male is the original sin. In this case, I'm white. I need to repent for that sin. I need to keep doing it. Keep going to these trainings. Keep doing the work. I think they were waging a psychological war campaign, and they're trying to break people, and they almost broke me, but they didn't. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad they did not. I'm glad he's free. I'm glad he escaped. I really hope that he pushes this to its fullest, and I hope he wins. I hope he destroys them. Oh my gosh. The lawsuit also revealed that a professional development video at Penn State said that white English, quote, kills people of color. It's unclear if the video provided any proof of such a claim or simply said it and expected those consuming it to nod along. Next, Penn State warned DiPiero that dissenting from Penn State's race-based dogma would result in disciplinary action per the lawsuit. This is First Amendment violation. Holy cow. So here we have a major university normalizing, even demanding the racist treatment of white people. First, the school instructs professors to admit that they are guilty of being white. Guilty, yes, guilty. Then instructs them to subject students to the myth that language is racist. It's called racial indoctrination. At no other point in history would such education be acceptable, and it shouldn't be today. Therefore, he should say, Bobby said thereby, I'm saying therefore. Therefore, lawsuits ought to be the method to prevent its escalation. Penn State told Fox News it had no comment on the matter because of ongoing litigation. Oh, you bet your butt they don't. Good. I hope they're sued into the ground. I hope this bankrupts them. You know, it won't because of all the endowments, but it should. Fascinating story. We'll be keeping an eye on what Zach DiPiero is up to, and I really hope he wins his case. But here's another similar story, and then we will wrap it here. Mayo Clinic threatens to fire a professor for comments on COVID treatment and men in women's sports. While seeking legal protections afforded to educational institutions, Mayo is operating like a for-profit business venture, controlling its employee communications with the public, the lawyer says. The Mayo Clinic has several hundred active projects funded by the National Institutes of Health across its 3 locations, of course it does, totaling over $440 million. But the premier U.S. hospital now appears concerned about a professor's comments potentially closing the federal spigot. Of course they are. The Rochester, Minnesota-based nonprofit Academic Medical Center's concern is about a professor of anesthesiology who studies exercise physiology. Oh boy. There's your problem, and whose research has been continuously funded by the NIH since 1993. Its College of Medicine and Science gave the professor, Michael Joyner, a 1-week unpaid suspension and preemptively denied him future salary increases for talking to the media about a disfavored COVID-19 treatment and the inherent athletic advantage of males over females, regardless of cross-sex hormones, according to its March 5th disciplinary letter. Joyner will be fired if he does not discuss approved topics only and stick to prescribed messaging and eliminate use of idiomatic language that has harmed the organization's brand and reputation, states the letter, referring to his media interviews that riled Mayo's public affairs team. A wide range of academics and academic freedom groups have warned the private institution that it's violating its own academic freedom promises, endangering the Mayo Clinic's reputation. UK's Daily Mail jokingly called it the Mao Clinic. Yeah, for sure. And risking a lawsuit and perhaps his college's accreditation. Good. I hope he takes their accreditation from them. That is honestly... Wow. I seriously hope both of these professors win their cases against these universities, because I would love nothing more than to watch these institutions of higher education taken down. Andy and I are constantly going back and forth about higher ed, but this is why I think so poorly of the entire institution, right? This is the kind of stuff they're pushing. They give Anthony Fauci a position. They tell their professors to sit down and shut up. They tell their professors they're guilty of being white. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. This is not an environment in which actual learning is done. There's absolutely no excuse for this stuff. But it's been a minute since I looked at you guys' chats, so let's see what you guys are saying. Maybe. Let me see if I can pop it back in there where it goes. Because I popped it out and I said pop it in and now it's gone. Okay, cool. Oh, there's a bunch. Thank you. Toyota was holding off on trying to switch the electric push. BlackRock was trying to push them into it. Oh, Ford, go further and deeper, says Andy. Thank you, dear. Ford definition found on road dead. Yes. Backwards, its driver returns on foot. Andy says fix or repair poor daily. Failed on race day, or effort only runs downhill, says Stevie. Yes, wonderful. Good stuff. Good stuff. I like the downhill one, sure. For sure. And he says this is destroying the credibility of science. Yes, the Mayo Clinic is actually one of the best hospitals in the U.S. and by extension in the world, which means that is a scary position that we're entering into, right? I'm just going to say that everybody keep yourself super healthy. You got to start eating healthy. You got to start moving more, because our hospitals are nonsensical. They are censoring all of this nonsense, and it is not worth relying on them at all. Yeah, so anyway. Somebody said young lady, and I object to that phrasing. I'm no longer young, although I am a lady. I do know what a woman is, actually. Orwell is turning in his grave over all this, in my opinion. Yes, 100%. I have a transgender story that I would think the national media missed. Sure wish someone would look into it. You are welcome to send it to Do I have an email address? You can tweet it at me. Tweet it at me, Larry, and I will take a peek at it for sure. Two Ladies says children with autism are considered even higher for trans issues, though this may have been pushed by current social push towards trans. Possibly so. Yep, for sure. Yep, don't email us, Larry. Tweet it at us for sure. You can tweet it at me and Andy at the same time. And he says, please like, comment, subscribe, share. Yes, for sure. In my humble opinion, it's twisted to push trans on anyone. It is sick. Yes. And I feel very, very bad. I feel very bad for people who deal with trans difficulties. Having gender dysphoria is a tough position to be in. Stevie says, good stream. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. You too, Stevie. Thank you so much for joining me. I made it almost an hour. I'm very tired. I'm going to go make for dinner for Andy, and then I'm going to go to bed. But thank you guys all so much for joining me tonight. I will have more and hopefully more energy for you tomorrow. We will talk about more of the breaking news and more of the various ways that our culture is falling apart. So stay tuned then. I also upload this as an audio only podcast. I try to upload that at about 8 p.m. It depends, but whatever I can get it into will make that happen. All right, you guys. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Andy says only one per customer unless you tune in tomorrow night. Same bat time. I assume he's going to say same bat channel. Yes, that's correct. I will see all of you guys tomorrow. Until that next time. Bye, guys. How's it going?